Let's just move to something we haven't really discussed for more than a week and a half.
You're not going to say Brexit, are you?
I am.
What's happened to Brexit?
There was a time when all we talked about every day was Brexit. Now, for about 10 days, 2 weeks, we've not really even mentioned it. Where are we with Brexit? The clock still ticks down.
There isn't. Friday is a huge summit, very important, because, as you say, clock is ticking down. In about a year's time, we leave. It looks now the government's looking forward with the EU to that 21-month transitional period, which will mean we'll really be in the European Union, but we'll lose our say with the Council of Ministers and our MEPs. And overnight, the Tory truce has broken down. Lasted about a week and a half. I'll give you that Tory boy, as long as I thought, with
Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's his own man,
with
Kevin.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, who controls that group of ideological, obsessive Brextremers, backbenchers in the Tory party. The tail that wants to wag the dog is now saying we've become a vassal state again.
As a Brexiteer, is there not something about this situation with us up against Russia that makes you slightly nervous that when we go and say to the EU we're stronger together, but we're leaving, that makes us slightly weaker?
I was rather impressed by how quickly the coalition was put together. They had a United States, Germany, France, NATO, pretty impressive. They had all of these people. The only person that didn't have was Jeremy Corbyn, extraordinary. So I think the coalition was put together really impressively, and it shows that Britain can walk tall quite easily when it's out the EU.
See, again, it's always look for the enemy within.
It's true.
It's true. Putin will enjoy that.
It's true. Perception is 90% of this. The perception at the end of this process so far is Theresa May has been strengthened by this, and she got a big coalition, and good on her for doing that, because it makes it so much more powerful to say to Putin, it's not just us you're dealing with, it's the United States, it's Germany, it's France and so on. But Corbyn looks weakened, whether that's fair or not. And for the reasons we discussed earlier about taking your time on these things, you know, he's got a point. But at the same time, the British public, knowing them as I've done for a long time, they don't like people who look like they're wobbling.
They want strength.
And also, the Labour Party position changed at the weekend. Every single front bencher distanced themselves from Corbyn's position. Every single one.
But they also want people who are right. And they don't rush to judgment. Yes, you can.
They're with her or not.
As you saw with France, Germany, the US, they didn't go as far as Theresa May did. They all put caveats in about whether or not Putin and the Russian state was responsible.
Terrible week for Corbyn.
I've been here before so many times, and I go back to Iraq in 2003.
But Theresa May she knows, you know, as well as anybody what happened over Iraq. They must be pretty sure to stick their necks out and say that it's highly likely.
Also, there is a difference. There is a difference here. There's a difference here.
I'm not.
The Iraq War was based on, after 9/11, on a presumption Saddam was going to use his weapons of mass destruction, which never turned up, right? This, we know they have been used. Chemical weapons, this nerve agent, have been used to commit attempted assassination, including a British police officer, and contamination potentially of hundreds of British subjects. So there's been a direct attack, and I think what's really significant about this is to remind ourselves that in Saddam's case, he hadn't done anything when we went to war with him. He'd done it 15 years before. He behaved like
he killed a lot of Kurds and
but that was but he'd used the chemical weapons that we were alluding to 15 years previously, right? And had since moved on. It doesn't defend him, he was a horrible piece of work, but the reason we went to war turned out to be false. Here, the reason that we are planning any action is demonstrably true. The only question is...
Who's responsible?
But that's absolutely important. There's no question a nerve agent has been...
Who else would want to do this? Who else is going to track down a Russian traitor living in Salisbury? Who else knows his daughter's coming over?
Who else has made Novichok?
Right? Who else has got Novichok? You put it all together, very hard to see who else it would be.
I agree. And I'm with you, and I think that's where all the evidence points, and that's where we're going to go.
Kevin.
But until you've exhausted it and you've tested all the theories, until you've found out who actually administered it, who brought it in, how it was done, you never know.
But you may never find out.
Well, you keep on searching, and you're right. We may never solve it. You're right.
Just imagine if Corbyn had been Prime Minister. Would that have been his weak,
well, that is the big worry with Corbyn.
Pitiful.
Is that Corbyn and Diane Abbott, who's the Shadow Home Secretary, whenever you ask them, would you use, for example, what I haven't seen debated in this last 2 weeks is the Trident programme, right, which has been the subject of massive conjecture. Most Labour front benches want to get rid of it to save the money. Would this be a good time?
No, most want to keep it.
Well, Corbyn doesn't.
But Labour's last manifesto...
There's the three top wigs in the party on defence.
Labour's manifesto, the last election, keep Trident. But Trident, spending all that money on a huge weapon of mass destruction is not going to save you from some agent.
But I bet if you took a bet on...
Official or unofficial.
If you took a poll on Trident right now, it'd be overwhelming support for renewing it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, but it would be an error. The $3 billion a year you're going to spend...
You would get rid of our nuclear deterrent right now with the situation with Russia?
I would trade it out, yeah.
Would you?
I would spend that money better on defence and intelligence.
OK, we're going to talk to a chemical weapons expert in just a moment.
Only one language people like Putin understand. And that is strength, military strength.
Don't get that from Corbyn.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Kevin,
what are you going to
thanks very much. I know.
Have a game of judo with it, that's it. Maybe, you know.
You'd lose.
Yeah. 6:32.
We're going to nuclearly disarm these two.